All right, you're listening to 91.5 WUML Lowell Blues Deluxe. And today it's my pleasure to have the great Gina Sicilia on with me. Actually, Cecilia Syracuse now, right?
Yes, Cecilia is still for music, but yes, Syracuse is my husband's last name. I'm using it for as my married name, I guess. Yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
It's great. You and I have in the past hooked up on with interviews. And I was trying to get you into the studio one time, but your schedule just didn't work around my schedule, so
Mm-hmm.
we weren't able to do it. But I saw you at the IBCs at the KBA Awards,
Mm-hmm.
and I went, I'm going to talk to her and see if we can do this.
Yes, yes. It was so great being there, and it was wonderful to see you. And that was an exciting day, also. And it was wonderful to talk to you then, and make this happen. So glad we got to do it.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
So let's start out. I usually start out asking questions about your. I want the listeners to be able to know more about you when they listen to your music. A lot of listeners don't know much about the artist.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a way for me to give the listeners a little more info on you,
Mm-hmm.
an artist, and what you've done all these years.
Okay,
So you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Newtown, Pennsylvania, which is just a little bit north of Philadelphia, born and raised.
And growing up, what were you listening to? What types of music were you listening to?
I was listening to the music that my parents loved when they were growing up. A lot of music from the 50s and 60s, a lot of doo-wop coming from Philadelphia. My dad loved doo-wop and would always play that. I remember there was a radio station, WOGL in Philadelphia. It still exists, but it used to be Oldies 98.1. And every Sunday night they would have Street Corner Sunday, which I guess you could interpret as being something else, but it was for doo-wop. Every night was doo-wop. Every Sunday night was doo-wop with Harvey Holiday on WOGL, and just playing a lot of that kind of music, and the girl groups like the Shirelles and the Ronettes and Dion and the Belmonts, and a lot of that music, and and also a lot of Italian music. My dad was born and raised in Italy, and always kept in touch with the current pop music in Italy, even though he came to America in the 1960s. So growing up, I was exposed to a lot of Italian music, and also my first live concerts were all Italian artists. So that
Wow.
was something unique about my upbringing. Yeah.
So like who'd you see back then when you were growing up?
Well, my I think my first Italian concert was in Atlantic City. That's where all the Italian artists would come for the Italians that lived in South Jersey and Philadelphia. And he was an artist named Toto Cutugno. And he had a lot of great songs. People in America don't know him, but he had a lot of great songs. And I want to say that at that concert, Andrea Bocelli actually opened for him.
Wow.
So I saw Andrea Bocelli when he was just an opener. Nobody knew who he was. He hadn't broken in America yet. And uh, it was kind of like one of those typical opener sets. We see he was a we see somebody bringing him out on stage. Nobody knew who he was. People were kind of chatting a little bit during his set, going up and going to the bathroom, and just treating him like they would treat an opener who was unknown. And then, of course, a few years later, he became huge in America. So I can always say I got to see Andrea Bocelli when he was just an opener. But
Young guy at that time, I
and
bet.
well, he was. So that's kind of cool. Yeah.
So what were you listening to on the radio as a kid? What types of
Oh.
things?
Well, of course, the music that was pop music at the time. So that would have been in the early to mid '90s. So of course that kind of stuff too. Like the stuff that was popular in the mid '90s, like Smashing Pumpkins and Bush and No Doubt and Oasis, and that kind of music. Of course, always Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston and Celine Dion and those female singers that everybody loved. Um, but also the music, the other music that I love that my parents loved, the Shirelles and Dion and the Belmonts and doo-wop, and I loved R&B, and I loved Boys to Men. They were a Philadelphia group, and I loved that kind of singing, and I loved modern R&B. I used to love listening to Boys to Men, but of course all the pop and stuff that was on MTV. Of course, I used to follow that like all the other kids. When I was around 13 or 14 years old, I was watching TV one day and there was an infomercial on for a CD called Solid Gold Soul, and it was kind of the blues edition of that. And I heard them preview the music, and it was BB King and Bobby Bland and um, Aretha Franklin's blues stuff, even though I already knew who Aretha Franklin was, but it was her blues stuff on there. Etta James, James Carr, Irma Thomas, and I kind of liked how that music sounded in the preview, so I ordered it. And after it arrived, I listened to it nonstop, and I started investigating and digging a little bit deeper into blues music and classic soul, and kind of fell in love with it at that age, 13, 14 years old.
You just walked into that question, you know that.
So you know what? As I was saying it, I was thinking that that's probably for a separate question, but that's
It's all right. You just morphed right into it. That's great. So how old were you when you decided you were gonna go out and perform?
Mm. Well, I knew from a very, very young age, and before the age of 10 years old, that I wanted to be a singer. I always loved to sing since I was 2 years old. I would audition for talent shows and things like that, always singing around the house. I started writing songs about 12 years old. That's when I wrote my first song. I think it was a cheesy little song called Angel. And did talent shows and things like that. And then when I got into singing blues and soul as a teenager, I started writing those kinds of songs. And I had my heart set on, by the time I was a teenager, I had my heart set on becoming a blues singer when I grew up. And I first recorded at the age of 16, 15 or 16, when I was approached by a smooth jazz trumpet player. And he asked me to record a song he had written called Possessive. I still have the recording of it. So that was my first time ever recording a song. It was kind of this smooth jazz kind of trumpet solo, and that was my first time recording, but I just kept writing. And by the time I was 18, I started going to blues jams and things like that, and got my first experience on stage with other musicians when I was 18, 19 years old.
What was that like?
It was fun. It was fun. It was all new to me, so it was exciting. And after I graduated college, after I graduated high school, I went to college in Philadelphia at Temple University. I was a broadcast journalism major, and but I also knew at the same time that I wanted to be a singer. I put a lot of focus into my major, and I wrote for the school newspaper, and I worked at interned at a few radio stations, including WOGL, that station that I love, 98.1, and WXPN, the World Cafe Live. I interned for the Philly local segment, sorting through artist submissions. And also, I had a short internship at NBC 10 in the consumer alert department. But while I was doing all of that, I was also songwriting and booking myself gigs, and recording a little bit, and going every Tuesday night to this blues jam at a club called Warm Daddies in Old City, the Old City section of Philadelphia. And I would take the subway there, and it was every Tuesday night. I don't even think I was supposed to be getting in the club, but I did. And they never carded me, but it's okay. I don't want to get them in trouble, but I came for the jam, and I would watch people, and I got up on stage, and I would sing blues songs like The Thrill Is Gone, and Stormy Monday, and with other musicians. And it was a lot of fun, and it was exciting. And I kind of met the musicians at that jam that would help me form my first band. And I ended up doing my first gig at Warm Daddies one night. Yeah.
So those musicians that you met, were they part of your first record, Allow Me to Confess?
They were not. They were part of an EP that I recorded in Philadelphia in 2005. It was a 5-song EP that I recorded, but I never released. And I had a couple original songs on that album, and I also did Luther Allison's Part-Time Love. And but I never released it. And it wasn't until 2007 that I released something. So so those Philadelphia musicians were on an EP that I recorded but never released. And then a couple years later, I recorded my first album. So
I'm going to ask you a question. Do you have that first EP?
Do I have it? It must be somewhere. I don't know what happened to that recording. I would really have to look. It might be at my parents' house somewhere in Pennsylvania, or on somebody's computer. I would really have to dig around and look for it.
That would be interesting to hear that EP sometime.
Yes, if I can ever find it, it would be interesting to hear it. It's about 18 years old now. It wasn't me. I don't think it was me at my best. I was young and inexperienced, but it would be interesting to hear it again. Yeah.
You had on the first record, I see you had Dennis Grueling and Arthur Nielsen,
Yeah,
Shamika's guitar player.
yeah, I did. Yeah. Yeah, and that album was produced by Dave Gross, who played guitar with me for a number of years, and I had some great people on it. And by that time, by about 2007, I was spending a lot of time up in North Jersey and New York, and in particular at this club called Scotland Yard in Hoboken. And they had a Monday night jam there, and Arthur Nielsen led that jam. Well, he was part of that jam, and that's how I met him. And then Dennis Grindling, of course, was part of the North Jersey blues scene, and that's how I met him. And he started recording with me, and he started going on the road with me, and then eventually doing his own solo thing. So,
And then you signed with Viztone right after
mm.
that.
Yeah, I signed with Viztone my senior year of college, and I self-released my first album, which I recorded summer 2006. And I put all the music up on MySpace, and I was really into those early days of social media promoting, and any spare time that I had while I was still in school, I would spend in the computer lab on MySpace, adding friends, and then because I posted my new music on there that I had just released, and I just really got into social media very early on, and I somehow, I guess, I connected with Richard Rosenblatt from this
Viztone.
from Viztone, and he had just formed Viztone with Bob Margolin and Chip Eagle from Blues Review magazine, now Blues Music magazine, and he sent me a message on MySpace and introduced himself and told me about this new label he had just started. The only other artist on there was Bob Margolin, who was one of the partners, and they had also released a Pine Top Perkins DVD, and asked about me and invited me up to Boston, and then signed me to Viztone. And then my album was re-released with them that summer, and that opened a ton of doors for me.
And then you got a nomination for Blues Music Award.
I did. Yeah. Later that year, I signed with Piedmont Talent as a booking agency. Steve Hecht ran Piedmont Talent, and I got nominated for Best New Artist with the Blues Music Awards. It was a good year for me.
And you played with Dave Maxwell at the ceremony.
I
I saw.
did. I did play with Dave Maxwell at the ceremony. Yes.
He
Yeah.
he was a great guy. He was a local guy. He used to
He
play here
was.
in Massachusetts.
Yeah. Yep. I did. I had met him a few years before then. I can't, maybe we recorded a little bit together, or I knew people he recorded with, and so it was a good fit. I think we had already been friends by that time. So yeah, he was great. He was great.
And then your second album, Hey Sugar, which I remember because I remember receiving it. It was great.
Thank
Great
you.
record.
Thank you. I kind of stepped into a little bit more of the Americana realm and singer songwriter on that one. I was spending a lot of times at singer songwriter nights, and so I put a little bit more of that on that album. But Dennis Grindling was also on there, and I had some great horn players from New York City on that album. And yeah, I was very, very proud of it.
And then again in 2011, Can't
Mm-hmm.
Control Myself came
Yeah.
out.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that one.
I'm very proud of that album, and that has a lot of songs on it that I still do live, and I'm including Before the Night Is Through and Addicted. And again, it was produced by Dave Gross, and just really proud of it. A little bit even more Americana, especially toward the end of the album. I could Tina Turner's song "Crazy About You, Baby." I did their version of it. And Before the Night Is Through has been a successful song for me, and it's gotten a lot of radio play on in a genre that you would call shag music, Carolina shag dance music. And it's a popular form of radio format in the Carolinas. And it's so big that they even have the Carolina Shag Dance Awards or Shag Music Awards, and it got nominated one year.
That's
And it didn't
great.
win, but yeah, so it's continuously played in that radio, and people know it from there. They recognize it, and it's done well. Yeah.
On your next release, you covered it at a James song, "Don't Cry Baby."
Yeah.
That was
Yes,
that
that was
was a
recorded.
great version of that song.
Yes, thank you. That's a fun song to sing, and that album was recorded in Philadelphia at Morning Star Studios. It's produced by Glenn Barrett, who I learned about because he had recently produced an album for another Philadelphia artist called Melody Gardot, who was doing quite well, and yeah, that was a lot of fun to perform. A lot of great musicians on that album, and really, really proud of it. Yeah.
Right around that time or just before that, you moved to Nashville, right?
Right after I released that, I moved to Nashville. Yeah.
What made you decide to move? I can guess why you moved to Nashville, but I'm going to let you tell the listening audience why.
Well, it was kind of to start my life over in a new place, and of course it was Nashville, and I was becoming increasingly attracted to the Americana thing, and I was really exploring musically, and um, and it was to start over in a new place. And at the time, Nashville was a pretty affordable place to live for a musician. You could get a one bed, way more affordable than the Northeast United States. You could get a one-bedroom apartment for $400 a month, which was incredibly attractive for someone who wanted to move out of their parents' house and live on their own. And in a city like Nashville, full of songwriters, and it was also very centrally located for touring, which I was doing a lot of. It's surrounded by so many states, and it's easy access to the South, easy access to the East Coast, the Midwest. So it had a lot of positives, and of course it was Nashville with all the history there. So,
And
so I moved there
then, and
September
then you,
2013. Yeah,
and then you end up at Muscle Shoals in
yeah,
Alabama.
yeah. And when I went down to Muscle Shoals and I recorded down there, yeah, I did a little EP down there, and kind of for the most part self-produced it. I wanted to record something new and in the South, and that was just a little project that I came up with. Yeah.
How'd you decide to do that? What made you
Mhm.
decide you want to go down there?
You know, well, I think I was working with a musician who was from that area, and they recommended it, and they were kind of talking about it. I think that documentary about Muscle Shoals had recently come out. It was a pretty popular documentary about Muscle Shoals that was released around that time, and I thought, hey, instead of recording in Nashville where I just moved, let me go down to Muscle Shoals and try that out. So I did that.
And then you moved to a new label
I
right
did.
after that.
I did. Yeah. I did move to a new label. It was kind of just, um, wanted to go maybe the more Americana pop route. I'm not really sure. And I was looking for something new, I guess. And, something new is always good. It's always good to open up a new chapter. And I was talking to my friend, Ted Drozdowski. Do you know Ted
I
Drozdowski?
know Ted very well.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. And I was talking to him at his New Year's Eve party one year and telling him about this album I had recorded in Philadelphia in September 2015, and I was shopping it around, wanted to do something different with it, and wanted to know if he could recommend any labels that I might approach. And he told me about this new label in Los Angeles called Blue Alon Records, and Janova Magnus had been signed to it, and that's how he found out about it, because he had just written a bio for Janova Magnus. And he gave me the name of the guy who was running the label. His name was Kirk Passage. The very next day, on New Year's Day, I reached out to Kirk Passage, and I heard back right away, and we went back and forth for a few weeks or a number of months, and then eventually in um, March, I believe, without even meeting, he never saw me live. He offered me a record deal, and it was an incredible record deal. I had never had one like that before, um, and like a true. And everything that came along with it, and the company flew me out to LA, and it was such an adventure for me. The 5 years that I was with them, 5 or 6 years, it was such an adventure. All of the trips out to LA to record, and the parties, and things like that, and it was such an adventure and a great learning experience, and that came to an end in 2021.
Well,
But
before
I'm
you,
very grateful for it, and I would love to work with them in some capacity again in the future. Yeah.
that label helped you get international acclaim. You know
A
that,
little
right?
bit, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think so. I think so. Yeah, I
Based
had
on
I
that album,
yeah,
basically, Sunset Avenue, the EP.
yeah. Yes, that got a lot of overseas press, especially in Europe and in the UK. And it was just an EP, and it even debuted on Billboard. So sometimes people say that a full length album will get more press than an EP. I tend to disagree, just because of my experience with that album, the 5-song EP that got so much press, so much radio play, and hit the Billboard charts, got a ton of pre-orders. So I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about that one. I think an EP can do just as well as a full length.
And then Tug of War was the next one.
Yes, and the Tug of War was the next one. It was sort of a follow up to Sunset Avenue, because it had some of the same songs, kind of making Sunset Avenue obsolete in a way, because it had all the songs that Sunset Avenue did plus more.
But
Um,
that was a full length. That wasn't an
but
EP,
that was a
right?
full length. That was a full length. So that was followed up by Tug of War. I toured a lot for that album. I was on the road for I think 9 weeks that summer, supporting it, and then kind of when I got back from that tour, started a new chapter in my life. Started listening to a lot of music. I kind of took a lot of downtime from that tour, where I was listening to music 24/7. And when I do that, after a certain period of time of listening to music, I start binge writing, and and I did, and then I kind of got ready to record another album.
Heard the
And
Lie, right?
Heard the Lie, yes. And for that one, I worked with a producer named Dave Darling, who worked very closely with Blue Alon Records. He worked with a lot of the artists on the label, including Janova Magnus. He's produced many, many, many of her albums, and he continues to. And he's extremely talented. Dave Darling is so talented, and um, I got to work with him on that album, and I went out to Los Angeles for 3 weeks, and got to live in a hotel and record this album, and it was a great memory for me. Yeah, a great time in my life.
And you get to do a duet with Geneva too on that.
Yes, she texted me one day, and before I went out there to record, and asked if I wanted to do a duet, if I wanted to co-write a song. So she sent me some lyrics that she had been working on for a song called Brighter Day, and I put music to it. So then I wrote a melody and I put music to it, and we sent it to Dave, and he started working on getting the track ready. So we recorded the vocals separately. So throughout the whole process of writing and recording that song, we were never once in the same room together, and we
Wow.
have never once performed it live together. But we co-wrote it, and we hopefully I would love to do that someday. Um, but yeah, Brighter Day with Janova Magnus. Yeah,
I'm
and I'm
surprised.
very proud of that album. That album came out great. Yeah. Dave is just a killer producer. He really is.
And you did a cover of a Bad Company song on that too, Ready for
Yes.
Love.
Yeah. That was Kirk Passage's idea, to do a cover of Bad Company's Ready for Love, and just to do a soul version of it. And Dave Darling killed that one. I mean, he really nailed it, the production of it. Yeah.
So, right after that, I don't know how long after that,
Mm.
2021, 2022, Vistone came calling again, I guess.
Well, I did one more album for
Oh, you
Blue
did?
Lawn Records. I did one more album for Blue Lawn Records, and I'm not surprised. No, it seems like not many people know about it, because it never got sent out to radio, and that kills me. Um, but it was.
Do you
Um,
have it? Do you have it?
I do have it. It's called "Love Me Madly," and it
Can
was
you can you
produced
send
by.
that to me? I'd love to
Yeah,
play it.
yeah. You'll love it. It was produced by. It kills me that it hasn't been heard. It's my pandemic album. It was released May 2020, but just as everything was starting to close down in March 2020, everything was already in process and in the works for getting this for releasing this album. So there was really no turning back. But Blue Alon did make the decision not to send it out to radio. And anyway, but it was produced by Cody Dickinson from the North Mississippi All Stars, and features his brother Luther. And it's a soul album of love songs. And it was recorded in North Mississippi, and also recorded at Royal Studios in Memphis. It's a great
Unbelievable.
album, and it's called "Love Me Madly."
Unbelievable. They wouldn't send
Yeah,
it to radio. How do you
I
like
know,
that?
I know. So I might have to figure out a way to get it to radio, or to get it to press. I want people to hear some of these great songs that are on there. And it so kills me that um, more people haven't heard it.
So then it must have been 2021 or 2022 when you re-signed with Vistone.
Yeah. So in 2021, I also released a few more singles for Blue Lawn. Then we parted ways, and then I think that I still wanted to record. I had wanted to record another album, and then I I very next day, I think, I called Richard Rosenblatt, and I said that I wanted to record another album, and would he be interested in releasing it? Some time had passed, and he said, of course. And um, luckily, he agreed to do it. And um, you know, um, and then I did record. So I don't know if you want me to start talking about the album, or.
Yeah, yeah. Talk about that because
Okay.
I have some favorites on that album.
Okay. Well, before I moved to Nashville, I had met Colin Linden in Memphis at one of the blues. blues music award events, and it was great. And um, we kind of knew each other, and then in early 2013, even before I moved to Nashville, I wanted to play here. I wanted to book a gig, and I had known Colin, and I reached out to him to see if he'd like to do a gig together, and he agreed to. So I played my very first Nashville gig at Third and Lindsley with Colin. It was kind of a co-bill. Third and Lindsley is a really popular venue here in town, and we did that. And I had always loved his guitar playing and his style, and I always thought it was gorgeous, and I wanted to work with him in the studio. And then everything got busy. He got really busy working as um, music supervisor on the ABC show called Nashville. And then I was busy with recording other projects and touring, and it never happened until for almost 9 years later. I reached out to him to see if he'd want to get together and maybe write some songs, and just work together on something. And so we did. We got together, and then we decided that we shared this mutual love of old kind of spirituals and gospel, and then we decided to make a whole album. And we both loved Mississippi John Hurt. We both loved Sam Cooke and the Soul Stirrers. We loved old gospel, and we loved um, um, we loved a lot of the old spirituals that we did. And Gary Davis, blind Gary Davis, and
That's the one.
Reverend Gary Davis.
That's the song.
Yes, Death Don't Have No Mercy. So we had such a good time recording it, and we did it at his beautiful home studio in Nashville. We had the McCrary sisters come and sing backup, and a host of great musicians play. And yeah, and I got to finally record Make Me a Pallet on Your Floor with the McCrary sisters backing me up, and Death Don't Have No Mercy.
Yeah, you're the first woman I've ever heard sing that song.
Oh, I mean, wow, that's so cool.
I first heard it in '69 when Hot Tuna did it, and then other people over the years, all men. I've never heard a woman sing that song, which was great.
Oh, well, really? I mean, I don't. Yeah, it's interesting. I just choose a song that I love and I sing it. I guess it doesn't matter if it's originally performed by a man or woman. But
No,
and also we did Bright Side Somewhere by Reverend Gary Davis, and then I only had one original on that one because by the time I recorded that album, I had also started an Italian food business called Gina's Italian Cuisine. My little pandemic side hustle of cooking turned into a second career. It was keeping me very busy, and I kind of lost the focus that I had over the past even a year before that to really sit down and write songs. So this album was really just about doing songs that I had always wanted to record by artists that I had always loved, and Colin felt the same way. So it came out April 2022 on VizTone. Yeah.
And I'm going to play it right after this interview. All of it, all the way through. How's that?
That sounds great. So
let's talk about the new business.
Okay.
I was going to ask you about that, but you took that question too.
Sorry. Well, yeah, I come from an Italian background, and food is always a big part of your life and your family when you come from an Italian background. And when I moved to Nashville, I kind of got more into cooking on my own in my late 20s, and I always loved watching the Food Network shows and all the food competitions. And then throughout my 30s, I continued to nurture my growing interest in cooking, and then even more so by 2018, 2019, and I began posting things that I would cook online, and they seemed to get a good response. And by 2020, I, just like a lot of people, I cooked even more because I had to, because restaurants were closed, and I was still went to the supermarket. That's really the only place I would go. And I would do a lot of cooking at home. But I was also releasing an album during that time for Blue Elan, the album with Cody Dickinson, Love Me Madly. And to promote the album, we decided to incorporate a lot of cooking elements into it. So as an example, for people who would pre-order the album, we offered them some of my recipe cards and as a thank you. And I would also do Friday night live stream cooking shows in my kitchen. It would be called, like, what was it called? Friday Night Eats with Gina Sicilia or something like that, where I would show a recipe and also play one of the songs from the album in the background, and as a promotional thing for the album, and just because I was sitting in my apartment not having anything to do. So I did more and more of that, and then I got the idea to start writing a cookbook, and I started doing that. And then, kind of on a whim, one day I was inspired to start selling entrees to people and placing orders over the internet and delivering them. And so I started doing that, and I posted it. It sold 50. I sold 50 orders right away, and that's when Gina's Italian Cuisine was born.
Wow.
And and in the past I wanted to sell at farmers markets. I had considered the idea of selling tomato sauce at farmers markets, and then I finally started doing it in summer 2021. I spent a lot of time at farmers markets selling my entrees and sauces and desserts, um, and and then I started doing something I never thought I would do. I did a gig where I also cooked for the crowd. And that has
Wow.
turned into a completely new career for me. I mean, I have music and I have food, and then I have this thing in between that's music and food. And it's still evolving very naturally. It's something that has not been planned at all. It's just kind of been this natural evolution of the merging of these two different careers. One that I've had my whole life, and one that's still kind of new to me, where I'm being invited to cook for people and also sing. And that's part of the deal. And I like it, and I feel like it's two unique things that I have to offer that I can bring together to create a product that's completely unique to me, and authentic.
That's
And authentic.
incredible.
So
That's incredible you've done that.
yeah. So, but it hasn't, like I said, it hasn't been, hasn't been planned at all. It hasn't been. It's just been a very natural progression and evolution. And if you had told me a few years ago I'd be doing this, that cooking would be my primary thing, and I just wouldn't believe you. But it has been but it's given me a way to stay creative and be passionate and still make my own schedule while making a living. And it's taken a lot of the pressure off of music. I'm no longer feeling like so stressed over music all the time, and focusing on what I don't have, and always wanting something else, and wanting this gig and wanting that gig and wanting that tour. My life does not revolve anymore around just music. And it's been such a healthy thing, because when I do make music now, whether it's performing or recording, I truly appreciate it and I enjoy it, and it's for the love of it. And it's no longer this unhealthy obsession, I guess you would say, which is kind of what it can turn out to be. And I'm glad that I have this food business now, because even post pandemic, the music business is not what it was, and even then it was in tough shape. So as far as selling music anymore, it's I mean, people still buy music in the blues world, but it's not like it used to be, and streaming has kind of killed everything, and touring has become even more expensive. And and this is in the post-pandemic world. Even pre-pandemic, I was barely breaking even. So I'm so glad that I have this now, a way to make a living, and that I can still record and perform. And knowing that I have done so much. I'm only 37 with so much experience behind me, but I'm only just getting started, and I still have my whole life ahead of me to keep singing and recording. And it's far from over yet, but I have this thing to kind of fall back on that's still creative and that I love, and that I can merge with music. So it's perfect.
You can do both. That's
I
even
can do both.
better.
Yeah, I can do both.
Any new music coming out down the road that you know of?
Not original music by me. My next project, my 11th studio album, is going to be a Sam Cooke tribute album. And
You did mention that to me
yeah,
when I saw you.
and hasn't happened yet, because I'm crowdfunding to try to make it happen. And it's going to be produced by a producer here in town named Fred Mullen, who I had met through Blue Alon Records. And he does this thing in Nashville called Fred Mullen and Friends, where he does sort of like a soul review and invites friends out to come sit in and join him. And he reached out to me back in September and asked if I wanted to be a part of one of his shows. So I did, and we did some Sam Cooke stuff, and we had a great time. And I really enjoy working with him, and so he turned out to be the perfect fit for this album. But I'm crowdfunding it to try to make it happen. So it won't happen until I'm able to do that. So that's what I'm currently working on now. I have a GoFundMe going. So hopefully that can happen this year.
So you've traveled around, you've played in different places. Where's one of the favorite places you like to go to play to sing?
Mm, I love, well, I guess just geographically, I love visiting Colorado. I've always loved touring through Colorado because it's so gorgeous there. It's a really beautiful place, and I've also done some great gigs out there in Colorado and in Denver, in Boulder, in Colorado Springs. I've done great gigs there. I love playing in California. I love some of my Central and Northern California gigs, like the Torch Club and the San Jose Poorhouse. And I love playing in Bakersfield at the World Theater. I've done some great gigs there, really wonderful audiences there. Um, I like playing in Nashville with friends. I
Play in Memphis at all?
and no, I don't play in Memphis unless I'm there for one of the Blues Foundation events. Really, no.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places there. I found out going down Beale Street. There's lots of them.
I probably would have. I was planning a CD release party for spring 2020 that was going to feature Cody Dickinson and Luther Dickinson to promote this album, and then that never happened. Everything had to be canceled. So, um, yeah, I love playing in Los Angeles at the Hotel Cafe, um, and then there's other places that I used to play that I love that have closed, um, but
Where
many
do
places.
where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years?
Mm. In the next 3 to 5 years, I want my Italian food empire, and now it's kind of turning into like an event dining experience empire where it's kind of like merging different forms of art with music. And I've kind of gotten into the event planning business a little bit. Um, I'm also in the process of, for the past year, I've been in the process of writing, developing my own TV show for local public access TV called Gina Cooks Nashville, where I would basically feature different people, places, and things in Nashville. It'll be sort of like a documentary style show and interview people, interview business owners, and it would all be in the context of food. So that's a goal of mine. And I did a few episodes for this during lockdown in 2020 and posted them on YouTube. I think I have about 3 episodes. But I recently met with a, a director and a producer at a market that I was working in this past fall, and she has done work for PBS. So we're going to be meeting in the next week or so. We're meeting next week to talk about really getting this show going and seeing how this can happen. Gina Cooks Nashville. The NECAT is one of the local public access TV networks here in Nashville, and they're very excited about it. They're on board, and they really want to do anything they can to make it happen. So, originally, I was going to film the whole thing and edit it myself on my iPhone. I was going to write it, direct it, produce it, all on my iPhone. But I want to do it well. I want to do it right, and I want it to look good. So I'm going to bring in hopefully this director from PBS, and we're going to make it happen. And a big part of all of that is playing my own music on the show. So kind of licensing my own music, I guess, right? And then maybe getting it syndicated, and you never know. So
So
that's yeah.
so on the combo that when you do food and music,
Mhm.
do you have a band with you or you just sing yourself?
Yeah, I have a band with me, or sometimes it's just me and a guitar player. Um, and yeah, and then there's like a buffet setup, that kind of thing, and it's just two things, so they're eating my food and listening to me sing, and it's a lot of work, but it's always worth it. The food, I have to say, I always thought the music business was tough. The food business is brutal. It is brutal with, I mean, the reviews you get. Like, at least I would do a gig, and if I wasn't to someone's taste, I probably wouldn't open up my email the next day and get an angry review. Well, since I started doing these kind of like pop-ups and dining experiences, the reputation of Yelp reviewers, how they can just
Yeah.
completely rip a restaurant apart and even like potentially harm someone's business. I get these kind of like angry emails if something wasn't what somebody was expecting, or they thought it was too expensive, or and it can be really, really mean. And so I, and it's a very personal thing to me, and I have to keep that in mind, that I'm not the only one that goes through this, and I have to have a thick skin. But it is brutal. It is brutal. It is very impossible to please everyone. And people are very, very critical when it comes to restaurants and what they're eating and what they're paying for, way more so than music, way more so than music. So I would say I have managed to come from the music business and find an even more difficult business and I found myself in there. So that's kind of funny, but I'm dealing with it, and it is what it is.
So how do people find out about the things you're doing now today?
The best thing to do is to follow me on social media. I have 2 Instagram pages now. One is for my music and one is for my food. And I have a few different Facebook pages. One is a personal page that you can send me a message on, or a request.
And a musician
of course,
page.
I have a musician page, Gina Sicilia. I have my food pages on there too. My company is called Gina's Italian Cuisine, so you can find that on Facebook, and you can also find that on Instagram, and I have an email list going, but and hope to have at some point things that I can ship nationwide. But
And they can donate to your GoFundMe via
yes,
Instagram.
yes, I need all the donations I can get to my GoFundMe, and that link definitely can be found on my musician page on Facebook, and I will be posting it this week. Yeah.
And no website? You don't have a website, right?
GinaSicilia.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Although I'm finding less and less of a need for a website as the time goes on. But
well, that's great.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate you taking some time out to talk to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I want to take a little screenshot here because we're doing this on video. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I'm glad that we finally got to make this work.
And one last question. Any touring ideas about touring coming up at all?
Well, I'm not going on the road like I used to. That's for sure. I'm not getting in a van and going on the road for weeks at a time. But I do want to still do one-offs. And if it's in a city or in a venue that I feel could be a really successful show for me. So for right now, I'm playing around Nashville. I do have a trip to Switzerland planned next year, where I'll be doing a festival kind of duet show with John Namath in Basel, Switzerland. It's called Blues Week, I believe.
Yep.
So I do have that coming up, and I would actually been talking to Rosie. I really want to come up to Boston and play a show and do something up there. I would absolutely love that.
Come up to Boston. You need to come and see me.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. So I would love to come to Boston this fall and bring my husband, and he's never been to Boston. So I would really love to show him that and
I have a studio.
Play a show.
I have a studio. You can come in and you can sing all you want in my studio. How's that?
I would love that. Maybe we could even put a house concert together, if anything.
Yeah.
And I'll cook.
How's that? That's even better.
Let's do that. Why don't we plan on that? I'll come up this fall or whenever we can, and we'll do it. We'll do a little house concert, and I'll cook.
Let me know. I'd love to have you come into the studio, and we'll bring people. I'll bring a listening audience you can cook for. How's that?
Okay, at your place?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
All right.
Fall
of 2023. Pretty good.
Yeah, let's do it.
Right.
It is gonna be a good year. It is gonna be a good year. So things are. Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's a very busy year. My husband is a local politician here in Nashville, and he is currently campaigning for another seat. So that has kept both of us very busy. So we both have 2 careers kind of going on right now, and our life is very busy, but we want to make as much time for travel as we can. And Boston is definitely a place on our list. And I think this would be a fun idea.
And I bet you cook for his campaign things that he does too.
I am about to on March 13th, which is his birthday. He's going to have a fundraiser, and I'm going to be doing the food. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you so much, and let me know if there's anything else that you need to know. And thanks everyone who's listened, and I will be posting the link for the GoFundMe on my social media account, so be on the lookout for that.
And keep me posted if you come in the fall. We're gonna set something up.
Okay, I
All
will.
right.
I will. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, John.
All right. Have a great
Okay.
day.
You
Yep.
too. Bye.
Thank you.